Anne Boleyn's story begins like a whisper in the grand halls of history, echoing through the corridors of time. Born sometime around 1501, the exact date shrouded in the mists of time, her early years remain a mystery. Anne entered a world on the cusp of change, a period where the old and new worlds were colliding. Her family, though not royalty, held significant influence in the Tudor court. Her father, Sir Thomas Boleyn, was a skilled diplomat, his ambition a mirror to his daughter's own future aspirations. Anne's mother, Lady Elizabeth Howard, boasted a lineage that intertwined with the highest ranks of English nobility, adding to Anne's prestigious background. Young Anne was sent abroad to further her education, a privilege reserved for those destined for greatness, and she embraced this opportunity wholeheartedly. In the vibrant courts of Europe, Anne blossomed, her intellect and charm captivating those around her. She learned the art of courtly intrigue in the Netherlands, mastering the delicate balance of diplomacy and strategy, and absorbed the sophistication of the French court, where elegance and wit were paramount. These experiences sculpted her into a woman of wit, charm, and an unyielding spirit, ready to face any challenge. Little did she know, these very qualities would captivate the heart of a king and forever alter the course of English history, setting the stage for dramatic changes. But for now, Anne was simply a girl on the brink of womanhood, her future a tapestry yet to be woven, filled with endless possibilities. Upon her return to England, she carried with her not only the elegance of the continent, but also a mind sharpened by knowledge and a heart brimming with ambition, ready to make her mark. The stage was set for Anne Boleyn to step into the dazzling and treacherous world of the Tudor court, where her destiny awaited. As Anne navigated the opulent world of the English court, a storm was brewing, one that would change the course of history forever. King Henry VIII, a man of immense presence and even greater ego, occupied the throne, ruling with an iron fist and a relentless ambition. Known for his charisma and athleticism in his youth, Henry was now becoming restless, his once vibrant energy turning into a quest for legacy and power. His marriage to Catherine of Aragon, though politically advantageous, had failed to produce a male heir, a matter of grave concern in the patriarchal Tudor dynasty, where the continuation of the lineage was paramount. Henry's gaze, ever searching for a new conquest, fell upon Anne, a woman who was unlike any he had encountered before. Her sharp wit and undeniable allure captivated him, drawing him into a web of intrigue and desire. Unlike the demure women of the court, Anne met Henry's advances with a captivating mix of encouragement and resistance, a dance that only fueled his obsession. She refused to be just another mistress, a bold move that only intensified the king's infatuation, making her an enigma he was determined to unravel. Their clandestine courtship sent shockwaves through the court, a place where secrets were currency and whispers could topple empires. Whispers of scandal followed Anne as Henry, blinded by desire, clashed with the established order, challenging the very foundations of his reign. The Church, with its immense power, stood as a formidable obstacle to Henry's desire to end his marriage, a desire that was growing more urgent by the day. The Pope's refusal to grant an annulment fueled Henry's growing frustration and set the stage for a monumental clash between crown and cloth, a battle that would reshape the religious landscape of England. In Anne, Henry saw more than just an object of affection. He saw a chance to break free from the constraints of the Catholic Church and forge a new path for England, a path that would lead to unprecedented change. The seeds of the English Reformation were sown, fertilized by Henry's desire and Anne's unwavering ambition, setting the stage for a new era in English history. Section 3. A Queen's Gambit, Anne Boleyn's Rise to Power. As Anne Boleyn's influence grew within the court, so did her list of powerful enemies. Her inability to produce a male heir and King Henry's growing infatuation with Jane Seymour ultimately led to her downfall. Accusations of treason, adultery, and incest were brought against her, tarnishing her reputation. In May 1536, Anne was arrested and taken to the Tower of London, where she awaited her fate. Despite a lack of concrete evidence, she was found guilty and sentenced to death by the court. On May 19th, she was executed by a skilled French swordsman, bringing her tragic and tumultuous story to a close. Anne Boleyn's legacy, however, did not end with her death. She played a crucial role in the English Reformation, leading to the establishment of the Church of England. Her daughter Elizabeth would go on to become one of the greatest monarchs in English history. Anne's story continues to captivate and inspire, a testament to her enduring impact on history.
Bet you didn't know the Virgin Queen had a few secrets tucked away in her royal sleeves. Queen Elizabeth I, the last of the Tudors, wasn't just your typical monarch. She was a master of espionage. Elizabeth had a network of spies led by Sir Francis Walsingham, who kept tabs on her enemies. And get this, she used secret codes and invisible ink to communicate. Talk about 16th century James Bond vibes, eh? But wait, there's more. Did you know Elizabeth never married but had a scandalous romance with Robert Dudley? Some folks even say they secretly wed. And her wardrobe? Worth a fortune. She had over 2,000 gowns. A true fashion icon of her time. So next time you think of Elizabeth I, remember, she was more than a queen. She was an enigma wrapped in a riddle. Stay tuned for more historical mysteries.
Anne of Cleves was born into a world of royalty. Her father was the Duke of Cleves. This was a powerful duchy in Germany, Europe. Anne was born in 1515. She was a gentle soul raised in a strict household. Anne's upbringing was typical of noble women. She learned domestic skills, including needlework and managing a household. Anne was also taught religious principles. She was a devout Catholic. Her family had strong political connections. Her brother became the Duke of Cleves, making Anne a valuable asset in the world of royal marriages. Her life took a dramatic turn when King Henry VIII of England sought a new wife. By the late 1530s, King Henry VIII was in a difficult position. He needed a male heir. His marriage to Jane Seymour had produced a son, Edward. However, Edward was a sickly child. Henry needed to secure the Tudor dynasty, so he decided to marry again. Anne of Cleves came into the picture because of her brother. Her brother had formed an alliance with Protestant German princes. He saw a chance for a political advantage. He needed to strengthen his position against Catholic France and Spain. The king's advisors suggested Anne as a suitable bride. They praised her noble lineage and her family's Protestant leanings. Henry VIII said, "I agreed to the match and sent my court painter, Hans Holbein the Younger, to Cleves. I want a portrait of Anne." Hans Holbein the Younger travelled to Cleves. He met Anne and painted her portrait. The portrait showed a fair-haired, pleasant-looking woman. Henry was pleased with what he saw. He eagerly anticipated his new bride's arrival in England. Anne arrived in England in December 1539. She landed at Deal in Kent. The king was eager to meet his bride. He went to Rochester in disguise. He wanted to see Anne before the official welcoming ceremony. The meeting was a disaster. Henry said, "I was immediately disappointed. I found Anne unattractive and complained that she was nothing like her portrait. I called her the Flanders mare." Despite his misgivings, the king went ahead with the wedding. Henry VIII and Anne of Cleves were married on 6 January 1540. The ceremony took place at Greenwich Palace. Anne was now Queen of England. However, the king was already unhappy. He made no secret of his dislike for his new wife. "Anne was not a virgin. She was not as beautiful as I had been led to believe." The king wanted to end the marriage. He was desperate for a son. He convinced himself that Anne could not give him one. Anne was caught in a web of political intrigue. She was a pawn in Henry's quest for power and an heir. She was also a victim of the king's fickle affections. She had committed no crime. She had done nothing wrong. Yet her... Section 5. A swift separation. Henry VIII moved quickly to end his marriage to Anne of Cleves. The union, which had been politically motivated, was surprisingly not to the king's liking. The marriage has never been consummated. Henry found Anne unattractive and was eager to find a way out. He declared that the marriage had never been consummated. He claimed that Anne had been promised to another man before their wedding. This was a convenient excuse for Henry to dissolve the marriage. These claims were flimsy at best. However, no one dared to contradict the king. Henry's power and influence were immense, and his word was law. Anne understood the precariousness of her situation. Anne was wise enough to cooperate with the king's wishes. She agreed to an annulment. Her compliance ensured her safety and a generous settlement. The marriage was dissolved in July 1540. Anne had been Queen of England for less than 7 months. Despite the short duration, she managed to secure a favourable position. The annulment was granted on the grounds that Anne had been pre-contracted to another. This legal manoeuvring allowed Henry to move on without much opposition. This meant that she had been promised to someone else before her marriage to Henry. The pre-contract was a convenient loophole. It was also declared that the marriage had never been consummated. This further solidified the grounds for annulment. Henry was free to marry again. His quest for a suitable wife continued, driven by his desire for a male heir and personal satisfaction. Section 6. The King's beloved sister. Anne of Cleves emerged from her annulment with remarkable grace. Despite the unexpected turn of events, she maintained her dignity and poise, winning the admiration of many at the Tudor court.
I will not fight the king's decision. I accept it with a calm heart.
She did not fight the king's decision. Instead, she chose to embrace her new reality with a serene and composed demeanour. She did not return to Germany in disgrace. Rather, she stayed in England, carving out a new life for herself in a foreign land. Instead, she accepted Henry's offer to become the king's beloved sister. This title was not just a formality, it was a mark of respect and affection from the king.
I accept the title of the king's beloved sister. It is an honour to hold such a position.
Anne was given Richmond Palace and Hever Castle as her residences. These were grand properties, befitting her new status and providing her with a luxurious lifestyle. They were a sign of the king's respect for his former wife. Henry VIII ensured that Anne was well taken care of, reflecting his appreciation for her understanding and cooperation. Anne also received a generous allowance. This financial support allowed her to maintain a household and live comfortably. She was able to live in comfort and style, enjoying the privileges that came with her new title and position. Anne adapted well to her new life in England. She embraced the culture and customs of her adopted country. She learned to speak English fluently, which helped her integrate more easily into English society and communicate effectively with those around her. She developed a good relationship with Henry's children, Mary, Elizabeth and Edward. Her kindness and warmth endeared her to them. She even became friends with Henry's 6th wife, Catherine Parr. Their friendship was a testament to Anne's ability to form meaningful connections and navigate the complexities of the Tudor court. Section 7. A life of privilege. Anne of Cleves, the 4th wife of Henry VIII, led a life that many would envy after her marriage was annulled. Her story is one of resilience and adaptation in a time of great political and religious upheaval.
Anne of Cleves enjoyed a life of privilege and independence after her annulment. She was granted a generous settlement, which included several estates. These estates provided her with a substantial income, allowing her to live comfortably and maintain a household befitting her status. She managed her own estates with a keen eye for detail and entertained lavishly. Her homes became centres of social activity, where she hosted banquets and gatherings that were the talk of the court. Her ability to navigate the complexities of estate management was impressive for a woman of her time. Her diplomatic skills and gracious demeanour earned her the respect of many.
Anne was also free from the pressures of being queen. Unlike her predecessors and successors, she did not have to navigate the treacherous waters of court politics or the constant scrutiny that came with being the king's wife. She did not have to bear children or deal with the dangers of courtly intrigue. This freedom allowed her to focus on her own interests and well-being, a rare luxury for women of her time. She was a devout Catholic at a time when England was undergoing a religious reformation. The shift from Catholicism to Protestantism under Henry VIII's rule was a turbulent period, yet Anne navigated it with grace. However, she managed to maintain her faith without incurring the wrath of the king. Her ability to balance her personal beliefs with the changing political landscape was a testament to her wisdom and diplomacy. She remained a loyal subject of the crown. Her loyalty and discretion ensured that she remained in the king's good graces, which was no small feat given the volatile nature of Henry VIII's court.
Anne also witnessed the ups and downs of Henry VIII's later years. She saw firsthand the toll that his health and marital issues took on him and the court. She saw the king marry 2 more wives, Catherine Howard and Catherine Parr. Each marriage brought its own set of challenges and dramas, which Anne observed from a safe distance. She saw the birth of his longed-for son Edward and the death of his only legitimate son. These events marked significant moments in Tudor history, and Anne's unique position allowed her to witness them closely.
Section 8. Outliving a king.
Anne of Cleves outlived Henry VIII by 10 years. She died on 16th July 1557, at the age of 41. She was buried in Westminster Abbey. She was the last of Henry's wives to die. She was laid to rest in a place of honour.
Anne's death was mourned by many. She was remembered as a kind and gentle woman. She had been a loyal friend to the king and his family. She had lived a life of dignity and grace. She had made the best of a difficult situation. Anne of Cleves is often overlooked in the history of Henry VIII's wives. She was married to the king for less than a year. She never had the chance to be a true queen. However, she left her mark on history. Section 9. A lasting legacy. Anne of Cleves may have been the forgotten queen in some respects, but her legacy is significant. She demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability in the face of adversity. She turned a potentially humiliating situation into a position of strength and independence. Anne's story challenges the traditional narrative of Henry VIII's wives as victims of his tyranny. She negotiated her own fate. She secured a comfortable and respected place for herself in English society. She did so without compromising her principles. Anne's life offers a valuable lesson in resilience, diplomacy, and self-preservation. She navigated the treacherous waters of Henry VIII's court with grace and intelligence. She emerged from the experience with her head held high. Section 10. Anne's quiet triumph.
Anne of Cleves' story is a reminder that history is not always written by the victors. Sometimes it is the quiet, the forgotten, and the overlooked who offer the most compelling stories.
Anne's life, though brief and seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of Tudor history, speaks volumes about her character and strength.
She was a woman who refused to be defined by her marriage or lack thereof. She carved out her own path. She lived her life on her own terms.
In a way, Anne of Cleves achieved a quiet triumph. She found peace and contentment in a world that was often anything but peaceful. Edward VI, the only son of Henry VIII and Jane Seymour, was born on October 12, 1537. His birth was a momentous event, not just for the royal family, but for the entire nation. The arrival of a male heir was seen as a divine blessing, a sign that the Tudor lineage would continue unbroken. His birth was a joyous occasion, as Henry had desperately desired a male heir to secure the Tudor dynasty. The court erupted in celebrations, with feasts, jousts, and grand ceremonies held in honor of the newborn prince. The people of England shared in the joy, their hopes pinned on the young Edward to bring stability and prosperity to the realm. Edward's arrival was met with nationwide celebrations and pronouncements of a golden age for England. Bells rang out from every church, and bonfires were lit in towns and villages across the country. The birth of a prince was not just a family affair, it was a national event, symbolizing hope and continuity. However, the young prince's life would be marked by both privilege and tragedy. His destiny intertwined with the tumultuous religious and political landscape of Tudor England. The Reformation was in full swing, and the country was divided between those loyal to the old Catholic ways and those embracing the new Protestant faith. Edward's upbringing would be deeply influenced by these religious conflicts. Edward's early years were spent primarily at Hampton Court Palace, surrounded by a retinue of nurses, tutors, and servants dedicated to his well-being. The palace, with its grand halls and lush gardens, was a world unto itself, a place where the young prince could grow and learn in relative safety and comfort. His childhood was meticulously documented, offering glimpses into the life of a royal prince. Diaries, letters, and official records provide a detailed account of his daily routines, his studies, and his interactions with those around him. These documents reveal a child who was both privileged and burdened by the expectations placed upon him. Edward was a bright and precocious child, displaying a keen intellect and a thirst for knowledge. He was particularly fond of reading and could often be found with a book in hand, lost in the worlds of history, theology, and classical literature. His tutors marveled at his quick mind and his ability to grasp complex concepts with ease. He excelled in his studies, particularly languages and religious doctrine, reflecting the burgeoning humanist ideals of the Renaissance. Latin, Greek, and French were among the languages he mastered, and he engaged deeply with the religious debates of his time, showing a precocious understanding of the theological issues that divided his country. Despite his privileged upbringing, Edward's life was not without its share of sorrow. The weight of his future responsibilities loomed large, and the pressures of his position were ever present. He was acutely aware of the fragility of his health and the precariousness of his family's hold on the throne. He was only 6 years old when his mother, Queen Jane, died from complications following his birth. Her death was a profound loss for the young prince, who would grow up without the comfort and guidance of a mother's love. The court went into deep mourning, and the shadow of her absence would linger over Edward's early years. The loss of his mother undoubtedly cast a shadow over his early years, though he would have had little memory of her. Jane Seymour was remembered as a gentle and kind queen, and her legacy lived on in the stories and tokens that Edward cherished. Her death also had political ramifications, as Henry VIII's subsequent marriages would further complicate the royal succession. Nevertheless, Edward was said to have cherished her memory and the few tokens of her affection he possessed. Among these were a locket containing her portrait and a few letters she had written. These mementos served as a tangible connection to the mother he had lost too soon. Edward's relationship with his father, Henry VIII, was complex. Henry was a larger-than-life figure, a king whose decisions shaped the course of English history. For Edward, he was both a distant monarch and a doting father, a man who commanded both fear and admiration. Henry doted on his son and heir, seeing in him the fulfillment of his dynastic ambitions. He lavished Edward with gifts and attention, ensuring that he wanted for nothing. Yet this affection was tempered by the demands of kingship, which often kept Henry away from his family. The king took a keen interest in Edward's education, ensuring he received instruction from the finest scholars in the land. These tutors were tasked not only with imparting knowledge, but also with instilling in Edward the qualities of a future king. They taught him the arts of governance, diplomacy, and warfare, preparing him for the day he would ascend the throne. However, their relationship was also marked by distance, as was common for royal families of the era. The demands of ruling a kingdom meant that Henry and Edward spent much of their time apart, their interactions often limited to formal occasions and state ceremonies. Edward saw his father infrequently, their interactions often limited to formal occasions. These meetings, though rare, were significant, as they reinforced the young prince's understanding of his future role. In these moments, Edward glimpsed the weight of the crown he was destined to wear, a burden that would shape his life and reign. Edward's education was paramount, befitting the future King of England. From a very young age, it was clear that his upbringing would be meticulously planned and executed to ensure he was well prepared for the immense responsibilities that lay ahead. He was taught by renowned scholars like Richard Cox and John Check, who instilled in him a love for learning and a strong grounding in humanist principles. These educators were not just teachers, but mentors who shaped his intellectual and moral character. Edward excelled in his studies, mastering Latin, Greek, and French. His proficiency in these languages allowed him to access a vast array of classical texts, broadening his understanding of the world and its history. He read widely, delving into history, theology, and classical literature. His voracious reading habits were encouraged by his tutors, who believed that a well-rounded education was essential for a future monarch. His tutors noted his sharp mind, his remarkable memory, and his ability to grasp complex concepts quickly. They often marveled at his intellectual curiosity and his eagerness to learn, which set him apart from many of his contemporaries. Beyond his academic pursuits, Edward received instruction in more practical matters. His education was designed to be holistic, ensuring that he was not only intellectually capable, but also skilled in various practical arts. He was trained in horsemanship, archery, and swordsmanship, skills deemed essential for a Renaissance prince. These activities were not just pastimes, but crucial components of his training, preparing him for the physical demands of leadership and warfare. He also received instruction in courtly etiquette and diplomacy, preparing him for the social and political demands of his future role. Understanding the intricacies of court life and the art of negotiation was vital for a prince who would one day rule a kingdom. Despite his rigorous education, Edward was not entirely confined to his studies. His schedule included time for relaxation and leisure, which were considered important for his overall well-being. He enjoyed outdoor pursuits like hunting and hawking. These activities not only provided a break from his studies, but also allowed him to develop a connection with nature and the land he would one day govern, and took pleasure in music and dancing. These cultural activities were integral to his upbringing, fostering a sense of appreciation for the arts and the finer aspects of courtly life. He was known to have a close circle of companions among the sons of noble families, friendships that provided him with some semblance of normalcy amidst the formality of court life. These relationships were crucial for his social development and offered a support system within the often isolating environment of the court. Edward's upbringing was deeply influenced by the religious changes sweeping through England. The Protestant Reformation was not just a backdrop to his education, but a central theme that shaped his worldview and beliefs. His father, Henry VIII, had broken with the Roman Catholic Church and established himself as the supreme head of the Church of England. This monumental shift had profound implications for Edward's education and future reign. Edward was raised in this new Protestant faith, his education steeped in its doctrines. His tutors ensured that he was well versed in Protestant theology, preparing him to uphold and advance the religious reforms initiated by his father. He developed a strong Protestant identity, embracing the Reformed theology with a fervor that would have a profound impact on his reign. His commitment to the Protestant cause was evident in his actions and policies, which sought to further entrench the new faith within the fabric of English society. When Henry VIII died in 1547, the kingdom was left in a state of flux. His death marked the end of an era characterized by significant religious and political upheaval. The once formidable king, who had broken away from the Catholic Church and established the Church of England, left behind a legacy that was both transformative and tumultuous. Edward, his only son by Jane Seymour, was only 9 years old at the time of his father's death. The young prince had been carefully groomed for kingship, but his tender age posed a significant challenge for the stability of the realm. As per his father's wishes, he ascended to the throne as Edward VI, King of England and Ireland. The transition of power was smooth in name, but the reality of a child king brought about a unique set of challenges. However, his young age meant that a regency council was appointed to govern in his name until he reached the age of majority. This council was tasked with the enormous responsibility of ruling the kingdom and ensuring the young king's education and preparation for his future role. This council was composed of leading nobles and advisors, tasked with guiding the young king and managing the affairs of the realm. The council's composition reflected the political and religious divisions of the time, with members holding varying degrees of influence and power. Edward's coronation took place on February 20th, 1547, at Westminster Abbey. The ceremony was a grand affair filled with pomp and circumstance, intended to legitimize his claim to the throne and project an image of stability and continuity. The young king, adorned in regal attire, was the center of attention as he was anointed and crowned. It was a grand affair intended to legitimize his claim to the throne and project an image of stability and continuity. The ceremony was meticulously planned to reassure the public and the nobility that the kingdom was in capable hands, despite the king's youth. However, the reality was that Edward's reign began in a climate of uncertainty. The kingdom was still reeling from the religious upheavals of his father's reign, and there were deep-seated concerns about the young king's ability to rule effectively. The political landscape was fraught with tension, and the Regency Council had to navigate these treacherous waters carefully. England was still grappling with the religious upheavals of his father's reign, and there were concerns about the young king's ability to rule effectively. The Protestant Reformation had created deep divisions within the country, and the Regency Council had to balance these competing interests while maintaining order and stability. The Regency Council was initially led by Edward's uncle, Edward Seymour, Duke of Somerset, who assumed the role of Lord Protector. Somerset was a seasoned military leader and a staunch Protestant, and he wielded considerable influence over the young king and the council. Somerset was a staunch Protestant and a skilled military leader, but he faced opposition from more conservative factions within the council. His policies and decisions often sparked controversy, and his leadership was frequently challenged by those who sought a different direction for the kingdom. These divisions within the regency highlighted the challenges of governing in the name of a child king, as different factions vied for power and influence. The council was a microcosm of the broader political and religious struggles that were playing out across the country. Despite the challenges, Edward's reign began with a spirit of optimism. The young king was seen as a fresh start, a new beginning for a kingdom that had been through so much turmoil. His youth and innocence were viewed as assets, and there was hope that he would bring about a more peaceful and prosperous era. The young king, though inexperienced, was seen as a symbol of hope for the Protestant cause. His reign was viewed as an opportunity to solidify the religious reforms that had been initiated by his father and to further the Protestant agenda in England. His youth and perceived malleability made him a focal point for the ambitions of those who sought to advance the Reformation in England. Advisors and nobles alike saw in Edward a chance to shape the future of the kingdom according to their vision. However, Edward's reign would be tragically cut short, leaving many of his aspirations unfulfilled. The young king's health began to decline, and he succumbed to illness at the age of 15. His death marked the end of a brief but significant chapter in English history, one that was filled with both promise and challenges. Edward's passing was a moment of profound sorrow for the kingdom. The hopes and dreams that had been pinned on his reign were left in limbo, and the future once again seemed uncertain. His legacy, though brief, was marked by his earnest efforts to continue his father's religious reforms and his role as a symbol of Protestant hope. The transition of power following Edward's death would usher in a new era, one that would continue to grapple with the religious and political challenges of the time. The young king's reign, though short-lived, left an indelible mark on the history of England, shaping the course of the nation's future in ways that would be felt for generations to come.
Queen Elizabeth I, the last Tudor monarch, ruled England from 1558 to 1603. Her reign, known as the Elizabethan era, is considered a golden age in English history. Elizabeth's intelligence, determination, and political acumen left a mark on England and shaped the destiny of a nation. This short documentary will explore the life and legacy of this iconic queen. From her tumultuous path to the throne, to the triumphs and controversies that defined her reign, we will delve into the complexities of Elizabeth's rule and her stance on critical issues, including slavery. Her story is one of power, intrigue, and enduring impact. Elizabeth's early life was marked by uncertainty and danger. Born in 1533 to King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, she was declared illegitimate at a young age following her mother's execution. Despite the challenges, Elizabeth received a rigorous education, mastering languages, philosophy, and history. Her path to the throne was fraught with obstacles. She faced threats from religious extremists, political rivals, and even her own half-sister, Queen Mary I. However, Elizabeth navigated these treacherous waters with remarkable resilience and cunning. Upon Mary's death in 1558, Elizabeth ascended the throne, inheriting a divided and unstable nation. Elizabeth's reign witnessed a flourishing of English culture, exploration, and power. She skillfully balanced competing religious factions, establishing the Church of England as a compromise between Catholicism and Protestantism. Her reign saw the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, solidifying England's position as a major naval power. The arts and literature experienced a golden age under Elizabeth's patronage. William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and Edmund Spenser produced some of their greatest works during this period. Exploration and discovery also flourished, with explorers like Sir Francis Drake and Sir Walter Raleigh venturing to the New World. Despite her successes, Elizabeth's reign was not without its controversies. Her harsh treatment of Catholics and dissenters, including the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, drew criticism. Her expansionist policies and colonization efforts laid the groundwork for future conflicts and exploitation. Elizabeth's personal life also attracted scrutiny. Her refusal to marry and produce an heir fueled speculation and intrigue. She skillfully used her unmarried status as a political tool, cultivating an image of the Virgin Queen devoted to her nation. However, her relationships with courtiers like Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, sparked rumors and fueled courtly dramas. The issue of slavery casts a complex shadow over Elizabeth's legacy. While England had no direct involvement in the transatlantic slave trade during her reign, English merchants, with Elizabeth's knowledge, participated in the slave trade with Spanish colonies. Elizabeth's personal views on slavery remain a subject of debate among historians. Some argue that she expressed moral reservations about the practice, while others point to her financial support of slave traders like John Hawkins as evidence of her complicity. The debate reflects the complex and often contradictory nature of historical figures and the evolution of moral perspectives over time. Queen Elizabeth I's reign remains a pivotal period in English history. Her leadership, intelligence, and determination shaped a nation, leaving an indelible mark on England's political, religious, and cultural landscape. Her legacy is a tapestry woven from threads of triumph, controversy, and enduring influence. While her views on slavery remain a subject of debate, her impact on England's rise to global prominence is undeniable. Elizabeth's reign serves as a reminder of the complexities of leadership, the enduring power of ideas, and the importance of understanding history in all its nuances and contradictions. Lady Jane Grey was born into a world of power and ambition. Her family tree boasted royal blood, making her a significant player in the Tudor dynasty. From a young age, it was clear Jane possessed a sharp mind. While other children played, she immersed herself in books, mastering languages and devouring knowledge. Jane's tutors were amazed by her intellect and thirst for learning. They praised her sharp wit and ability to grasp complex ideas. Her command of Latin, a language reserved for the learned, was particularly impressive. While she excelled in her studies, Jane remained remarkably humble. Her gentle nature stood in stark contrast to the ruthless ambition that often characterized court life. This made her a favorite among those who saw beyond the pursuit of power. However, fate, it seemed, had other plans for the young scholar. King Edward VI, a sickly boy king, clung precariously to life. With his death looming, England braced itself for a succession crisis. Edward, a staunch Protestant, wished to prevent his Catholic half-sister Mary from taking the throne. This is where Lady Jane Grey, a distant cousin and devout Protestant, became a pawn in a dangerous game. Edward's advisors, seeking to maintain their grip on power, saw in Jane a malleable figurehead. They pressured the dying king to name her as his heir, pushing aside the legitimate claims of both Mary and Elizabeth. When news of Edward's decision became public, it sent shockwaves through the court. Jane, thrust into the spotlight, was horrified. She had no desire for the throne and viewed the whole situation with dread. On July 10, 1553, Lady Jane Grey, a reluctant queen at the age of 16, ascended the English throne. Her reign, however, was destined to be short-lived. Mary, backed by popular support and a powerful network of allies, refused to accept this usurpation. The country, already on edge, teetered on the brink of civil war. Jane, trapped in a whirlwind of events she never sought, found herself a ruler in name only. Her advisors, riven by fear and infighting, offered little guidance. As Mary's forces gathered strength, Jane's support crumbled. The Privy Council, sensing the tide turning, switched their allegiance back to Mary. Jane, after a mere 9 days on the throne, was declared illegitimate. Her brief reign had come to an abrupt and unceremonious end. Deposed and imprisoned in the Tower of London, Lady Jane Grey faced an uncertain future. The Tower's imposing walls held both political prisoners and those condemned to death. Her royal lineage offered little protection. Her very existence posed a threat to Queen Mary's legitimacy. Despite the fear gnawing at her, Jane confronted her captivity with remarkable composure. She found solace in her books and her unwavering faith. Her spirit, though tested, remained unbroken. Mary, initially inclined towards mercy, hesitated to execute a young woman who had been, in many ways, a victim of circumstance. But Jane's very existence fueled unrest and rebellion. Mary, pressured by her advisors, saw Jane's continued survival as a threat to her reign. The shadow of the axe. The year 1554 brought with it a glimmer of hope for Jane and her supporters. Sir Thomas Wyatt, a powerful nobleman, led a rebellion against Queen Mary, aiming to depose her and place Jane back on the throne. Jane, still a figurehead for Protestant resistance, became a rallying point for the uprising. However, Wyatt's rebellion, plagued by poor organization and a lack of popular support, was swiftly crushed. Its failure sealed Jane's fate. Mary, no longer able to justify leniency, signed her young cousin's death warrant. Jane, informed of her impending execution, received the news with the same quiet dignity she had displayed throughout her ordeal. She had long accepted the possibility of death, finding solace in her faith and the belief that her soul would find peace in the afterlife. On a cold February morning in 1554, Lady Jane Grey, barely 17 years old, was escorted to the scaffold erected within the Tower of London. She wore simple attire, a stark contrast to the rich robes she had donned during her brief reign. Her composure in the face of death astonished onlookers. She addressed the crowd with a brief speech, acknowledging her claim to the throne had been unlawful, but maintaining her innocence in the face of treason. With that, she knelt, offering her neck to the executioner. Her life, cut tragically short, became a cautionary tale of ambition, religious strife, and the fickle hand of fate. Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, passed into history, remembered for her intellect, her piety, and her unwavering composure in the face of unimaginable adversity.
Imagine a time of intrigue, power, and larger-than-life personalities. Welcome to the Tudor dynasty. A dynasty that forever altered the course of English history. The Tudor reign spanned over a century, from 1485 to 1603. A period of significant change. It marked a transition from medieval to modern England, transforming the nation into a powerhouse of the Renaissance world. Born out of the turmoil of the Wars of the Roses, the Tudor dynasty came to power when Henry VII, a relatively unknown figure, defeated Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field. This unexpected victory marked the dawn of an era defined by political maneuvering, religious upheaval, and exploration. The Tudors gifted England with some of its most famous monarchs, each leaving a distinct mark on the nation's tapestry. We'll delve into the lives of these fascinating figures, starting with the cunning and calculated Henry VII, who laid the foundation for the dynasty. Then we'll explore the larger-than-life personality of Henry VIII, infamous for his 6 wives and the establishment of the Church of England. We'll then turn our attention to Edward VI, a boy king whose brief reign was marked by religious strife, followed by Mary I, whose attempts to return England to Catholicism earned her the nickname Bloody Mary. And finally, we'll delve into the reign of Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, whose long and prosperous rule brought about the Elizabethan Age, a golden era in English history. The Tudor dynasty is a tale of power, passion, and politics, a crucial chapter that shaped the nation's identity and set the stage for its future. It's a saga of religious reform, maritime discovery, and cultural revolution. It's a story of kings and queens who were far from perfect, but whose actions and decisions still resonate with us today. So let's dive into the world of the Tudors, starting with the man who began it all, Henry VII. Born in 1457, Henry VII ascended the throne in 1485 and ruled until his death in 1509. This period was a time of significant transition and change for England as it emerged from the shadows of the War of the Roses, a bloody civil conflict that had torn the country apart. Henry VII's ascension to the throne was not without its challenges, but his reign marked a turning point in English history. Henry VII's journey to the throne was a tumultuous one. Born Henry Tudor, Earl of Richmond, he was a distant claimant to the throne, with his claim primarily coming through his mother, Margaret Beaufort, a descendant of Edward III. Following the death of Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field, Henry took the opportunity to seize the throne, thereby ending the War of the Roses and beginning the reign of the Tudor dynasty. One of Henry VII's most notable achievements was his success in ending the War of the Roses. This was a series of conflicts that had been fought between the houses of Lancaster and York for control of the English throne. Henry, a Lancastrian, united the warring factions by marrying Elizabeth of York, thereby symbolically merging the Red Rose of Lancaster and the White Rose of York to create the red and white Tudor rose. This was a significant step in stabilizing the English monarchy and bringing an end to the internal strife that had plagued the country. Henry VII's reign was also marked by his efforts to establish the Tudor dynasty and stabilize the English monarchy. He was a prudent ruler, known for his fiscal responsibility. He implemented policies that increased the crown's income, reduced its debts, and built up a significant surplus. This allowed him to strengthen the monarchy, reduce the power of the nobility, and establish a more centralized government. Henry VII also worked to solidify his family's claim to the throne. He arranged strategic marriages for his children, most notably his eldest son Arthur, to Catherine of Aragon, and his daughter Margaret to the King of Scotland. These alliances not only strengthened the Tudor dynasty, but also helped to secure England's position on the international stage. Under Henry VII's rule, England began to emerge as a major European power. The country was stable, the monarchy was strong, and the stage was set for the dramatic events of the reigns of his successors. Henry VII may not be as famous as his son, Henry VIII, or his granddaughter, Elizabeth I, but his impact on English history should not be underestimated. His prudent rule and strategic decisions laid the foundation for the tumultuous but significant reigns of his successors. He turned a country torn apart by civil war into a stable and prosperous kingdom, setting the stage for the golden age of the Tudor dynasty. Henry VII's prudent rule laid the groundwork for the tumultuous reigns of his successors. His reign was a turning point for England, marking the end of the medieval period and the beginning of the early modern era. Born in 1491, Henry VIII, perhaps the most infamous of all Tudor monarchs, ruled from 1509 until his death in 1547. Known for his larger-than-life personality, he was a man of many passions, from music and hunting to architecture and theology. But perhaps what he is most remembered for are his 6 marriages and his break with the Catholic Church. Henry's first wife was Catherine of Aragon, his brother Arthur's widow. They were married for over 2 decades, but when it became clear that Catherine could not produce a male heir, Henry sought an annulment. The Pope refused, and in a move that would forever change England, Henry broke with the Catholic Church. In 1533, Henry married Anne Boleyn, but their marriage was short-lived. Accused of adultery and treason, Anne was beheaded in 1536 at Tower Green, found within the land of the Tower of London. That same year, Henry married Jane Seymour, who gave birth to his only legitimate son, Edward, but tragically died shortly after childbirth. Henry's 4th wife was Anne of Cleves. The marriage was political, arranged to secure an alliance with Germany. However, the marriage was annulled after just 6 months. Henry then married Catherine Howard, a young woman nearly 40 years his junior. However, Catherine's alleged infidelity led to her execution, making her the second of Henry's wives to meet such a fate. Finally, Henry married Catherine Parr, who outlived him and helped to reconcile him with his 2 daughters, Mary and Elizabeth. But Henry's marital escapades were not his only contribution to history. His break with the Catholic Church led to the establishment of the Church of England, a seismic shift in the religious and political landscape of the country. Henry declared himself the head of the new church, thereby centralizing religious and political power in the monarchy. This move had far-reaching implications. It led to the dissolution of the monasteries, as Henry seized their wealth and lands. This not only significantly increased royal coffers, but also redistributed wealth and power throughout the country, leading to the rise of a new gentry class. Henry's reign was also marked by significant legal and governmental reforms. He strengthened the navy, modernized the government, and established the principle of royal supremacy, which asserted the sovereign's authority over the church in his realm. However, Henry's reign was not without controversy. His break with the Catholic Church caused deep divisions within England, leading to religious persecution and violence. His desire for a male heir led to the mistreatment and execution of 2 of his wives, and his lavish spending nearly bankrupted the country. Despite these controversies, there is no denying the impact of Henry's reign. His decisions shaped the course of English history and laid the foundation for the modern British state. His larger-than-life personality and dramatic reign have been immortalized in literature, film, and television, making him one of the most famous monarchs in history. In the end, Henry VIII was a man of contradictions. He was a lover of the arts and a patron of scholarship, yet he was also a tyrant who ruled with an iron fist. He was a devout Christian who broke with the church to satisfy his personal desires. He was a king who dreamed of a male heir, yet his greatest legacy was arguably his daughter Elizabeth, who would go on to become one of England's greatest monarchs. Henry VIII's reign was one of dramatic change, setting the stage for an England that was forever altered. Born in 1537, Edward VI, the long-awaited male heir, ascended the throne at the tender age of 9 and ruled until his premature death in 1553. Though a child, he bore the weight of the crown on his young shoulders, standing at the helm of a kingdom in the throes of religious and political change. Edward VI's reign saw significant religious reform. Influenced by his Protestant tutors, he steered the Church of England further away from Catholicism. The Book of Common Prayer, introduced under his rule, remains a cornerstone of Anglican worship even today. This shift wasn't without resistance, however. The changes sparked uproar, notably the Prayer Book Rebellion of 1549, a violent manifestation of the population's discontent. Yet Edward VI's personal reign was limited, constrained by his age and ill health. The young king suffered from a debilitating illness, likely tuberculosis, which led to his untimely death at the age of 15. This physical struggle was mirrored in the political realm, where the council appointed to rule in his name grappled for control. This council was dominated by two key figures: Edward Seymour, Edward's uncle, and the Duke of Somerset, who initially held the title of Lord Protector, and John Dudley, the Duke of Northumberland, who eventually ousted Seymour in a political coup. These men essentially ruled England during Edward's reign, each implementing policies according to their individual agendas and ambitions. The power struggle culminated in a controversial attempt to manipulate the line of succession. As Edward's health declined, Northumberland persuaded him to name Lady Jane Grey, his own daughter-in-law, as his successor, bypassing Edward's half-sisters Mary and Elizabeth. This bold move was short-lived, however, as Mary swiftly reclaimed her rightful place on the throne following Edward's death. Edward VI's short reign was marked by religious upheaval and the power struggles of those who ruled in his name. Yet, it was instrumental in shaping the religious landscape of England, setting the stage for the reigns of his half-sisters Mary I and Elizabeth I, who would each take the country on their own distinct religious paths. Born in 1516, Mary I, England's first queen regnant, ruled from 1553 until her death in 1558. Mary, also known as Mary Tudor, was the daughter of Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Her ascension to the throne was a historic moment, as she was the first woman to successfully claim the English throne in her own right. After the short and tumultuous reign of her half-brother, Edward VI, Mary was determined to undo the religious reforms he and their father had put in place. She was a devout Catholic and sought to return England to the Catholic faith, a mission that would define her reign. In her efforts to restore Catholicism, Mary had Parliament pass laws that reversed the religious reforms of the previous monarchs. These laws reinstated the Heresy Acts, which made it a crime to deny the doctrines of the Catholic Church. This led to the persecution of Protestants, earning Mary the infamous nickname Bloody Mary. An estimated 300 Protestants were burned at the stake during her reign, a brutal enforcement of her religious policies that have left a dark stain on her legacy. However, Mary's reign was not solely defined by religious persecution. In 1554, she married Philip II of Spain, marking a significant political alliance. The marriage was a controversial one, as many feared it would lead to the domination of England by Spain. Despite the fears and opposition, the marriage went ahead, although it did not result in the feared Spanish control over English affairs. Mary's marriage to Philip was more of a political alliance than a love match. The marriage was childless, leading to a succession crisis upon Mary's death. Despite her fervent hope and several false pregnancies, Mary did not bear a child to continue her Catholic line. Throughout her reign, Mary faced numerous challenges, including economic issues, famine, and influenza epidemics. Her reign was marked by religious and political turmoil, as well as personal heartache and health problems. Despite her efforts, Mary was unable to achieve her goal of a Catholic England, as her policies were reversed under the reign of her Protestant half-sister Elizabeth. Mary's reign was a time of religious and political turmoil, setting the stage for the reign of her half-sister Elizabeth. Despite her controversial reign and the dark legacy of her religious policies, Mary I holds a significant place in history as England's first queen regnant, paving the way for future female rulers. Born in 1533, Elizabeth I, the last of the Tudor monarchs, ruled from 1558 until her death in 1603. Known for her intelligence and formidable personality, Elizabeth I was the daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. Her accession to the throne was a groundbreaking event as it marked the beginning of a queen's reign who would remain unmarried and childless, yet proved to be one of the most influential monarchs in English history. Elizabeth's reign was characterized by her skillful navigation of religious divisions that threatened England's stability. Her father, Henry VIII, had broken away from the Catholic Church to establish the Church of England. However, her half-sister Mary I had returned the country to Catholicism during her reign. When Elizabeth ascended the throne, she aimed to strike a balance, implementing a policy of religious compromise. She re-established Protestantism as the state religion, but allowed for a degree of religious tolerance, thus creating a sense of unity and stability within her kingdom. Elizabeth's diplomatic skills were also noteworthy. She managed to maintain peace for the majority of her reign, skillfully playing one European power off against another to ensure England's security. This was particularly evident in her dealings with Spain. Despite the tension and eventual war with Spain, Elizabeth managed to keep the conflict under control, resulting in the famous defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588. This victory boosted England's status as a global power and further solidified Elizabeth's reputation as a strong and capable leader. Perhaps one of the most intriguing aspects of Elizabeth's reign was her decision to remain unmarried. This was highly unusual for a monarch, especially a female one. Her decision was driven by a desire to maintain control over her kingdom rather than share power with a husband. This earned her the nickname the Virgin Queen. Despite numerous suitors and political pressures to marry and produce an heir, Elizabeth remained steadfast in her decision, leading to an era of relative peace and stability in England. During Elizabeth's reign, England experienced a cultural flowering known as the Elizabethan era. This period was marked by significant progress in the arts, literature, and science. William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and Thomas Kyd were among the many notable figures of this period, producing works that continue to be celebrated today. Additionally, Elizabethan explorers like Sir Francis Drake and Sir Walter Raleigh embarked on expeditions that expanded England's knowledge and influence across the globe. Elizabeth's reign was marked by several challenges, including threats to her life, economic troubles, and a lack of an heir to succeed her. However, her resilience and determination saw her through, and she successfully led her kingdom through a period of significant change and development. Her reign, which lasted for 45 years, was one of the longest in English history, surpassed only by a few other monarchs. Elizabeth I's reign, known as the Golden Age, marked the end of the Tudor dynasty, but the legacy of this fascinating era continues to captivate us even today. Elizabeth's reign is a testament to her skill as a leader and her ability to navigate the complex political and religious landscape of her time. She laid the foundation for England's future as a global power and left an indelible mark on English history and culture. Her legacy continues to inspire and intrigue us, underscoring the enduring significance of the Tudor period. From Henry VII's prudent rule to the cultural flowering of the Elizabethan era, the Tudor period was a time of dynamic change and unforgettable personalities. It was a time of significant shifts in politics, religion, and culture, all under the watchful eyes of a single ruling dynasty, the Tudors. Let's take a moment to look back at the key points we've covered about each monarch and their indelible impact on English history. We began with Henry VII, the founder of the Tudor dynasty. His reign marked the end of the volatile Wars of the Roses and the beginning of a new era of relative stability and prosperity. Then we have the formidable Henry VIII, a man of larger-than-life appetites and ambitions. His decision to break with the Catholic Church to marry Anne Boleyn was a defining moment in English history, leading to the establishment of the Church of England and a period of religious upheaval. Next, we delved into the reign of Edward VI, a boy king whose short-lived rule was marked by religious reform and the strengthening of Protestantism in England. His early death led to the ascension of his half-sister, Mary I, whose fervent Catholicism earned her the nickname Bloody Mary. She sought to reverse the religious changes implemented by her father and brother, leading to a time of great persecution. Finally, we explored the reign of Elizabeth I, a queen whose astute political acumen and cultural patronage ushered in a golden age for England. Her reign saw the defeat of the Spanish Armada, the flourishing of English drama and literature, and the strengthening of England as a global power. Each of these monarchs, in their unique way, shaped the course of English history, leaving a legacy that continues to resonate today. The Tudor period was a time of great change, of political and religious upheaval, of cultural flowering and global exploration. And so we close the book on the Tudor dynasty, a period that continues to fascinate, inspire, and intrigue us centuries later.